I guess we'll start it off. You have had your hand on the pulse of this campaign for months now. I mean, where do things stand right now from folks you've talked to and folks who you were on the same bus as?
We are all resting. We are taking in the time to really reflect on all the hard work that we just did. We had so many storytellers reliving trauma every single day, and I just hope that they are all resting. I know I am getting a lot of rest and really just trying to figure out what is next. And we knew that regardless of the outcome that there would be work to do. We just know it will be a little different this time, and we have to continue to stand together because at the end of the day, as long as we have each other, we'll be okay. And we know that our fight is not over, this is not done, and this is just, another bump that we'll learn how to get over.
You had said that you had a feeling at some point that things were going to probably go former President Trump's way. When did you feel that, and why did you feel that way?
Being on the campaign trail, I would kind of go through a lot of different emotions because I come from a very conservative place to where I knew how Kentucky was going to go. I knew how a lot of red states were going to go. But being in the battleground states and, hearing and seeing and having so many people tell me personally all the work that they're doing and all the people that they know that are also doing the work and making sure that everybody knows what is at stake. I knew that there was a big power in us, and I don't think that's gone away. I just know that, it was really hard campaigning and talking to people and getting them to realize where we were coming from sometimes, especially when big issues are so much more than one person's problem, and that was the hardest thing to separate. Whenever I kind of knew things were gonna go downhill, I just wanted to kind of go with my community and be with as many people who had fought on the campaign trail as much as I did, and just know that regardless of what happens at local, state, and presidential level, we were gonna be okay and we were together. And that was that.
You had brought up, and I'm glad you did, your background, where you come from. You understand what resonates with people from different groups, different ages, different demographics. What ultimately didn't hit message-wise in your mind from the Democratic Party as it relates to the race for president?
I think the hardest thing is these last 4 years of life for everybody have been tough. There is no denying that. But a lot of people blame our current president. I do not. But I think with that, he is the easiest person to catch the blame. He is the president, and he has worked tirelessly to get us out of these hard times. But ultimately, it has been a rough year for our government. It has been a rough year for the working class especially. And people are tired, and they know that whatever this is, they're ready to be done with it. And they kind of really put that with the Biden-Harris administration, I feel like. And it's really hard, even though Kamala has stood up and said, it would not be a continuation of the Biden administration. It still is hard to separate her from President Biden, even though that they have so many different policies and so many different views and beliefs. I think that it was really hard to make that message click with voters who weren't as involved as a lot of us were. It's really easy to think it's clear as day until, people still have their regular lives. They are not keeping up with politics all day while they're at their job. And they just know that they're ready to not struggle anymore. And I think that it was really easy to put it on the Biden administration for the hardship that we've had the last 4 years, even though it's not their fault, and to just kind of paint that picture as Kamala would just be a continuation of that.
Mm-hmm. From folks who you talk to, you kind of mentioned to me before the interview that you believe that the Harris campaign ran a very honest campaign, but not always the most transparent, is kind of what you said. Describe to me what you mean by that.
I think that Kamala was very honest in how she felt with so many different things. She would open her heart out and give you the most genuine and honest answer, and she would answer it in any way possible. But I think that there were some things that people wanted to talk about that maybe weren't talked about enough. Like, there were plans for immigration and getting a safer border, but let's talk about where we went wrong. Let's hold ourselves accountable in those issues. Let's find a common ground to decide where we go and how to fix problems, rather than sit back and just talk a little bit about how there was a bill, but someone shot it down, but there was a bill, and just really pinpoint on what happened with the border and what happened with the bill when it was trying to be passed. Because I know that immigration and the economy were the biggest two issues for many voters, as it should be. And I think that, Kamala's policies definitely would have led us in a better place. However, I think the messaging and just being straightforward, and even, maybe holding some things accountable that didn't work before, that we would be changing up and just laying it all out there, rather than acting like maybe there weren't any issues right now.
So you believe that maybe some of that messaging wasn't as effective as it could have been, as far as what my policies are in that way?
Absolutely. I think a lot of the messaging and everything was a little bit too explained. She would give her backstory, because so many people know that you want to know who you're voting for. But
she had 100 and some days. She felt like she had to do everything.
She had to do everything in so little time. And I think Kamala Harris did an amazing job with what time she had. Obviously, I couldn't have ran a better campaign. I'm not here to tell anybody how to do their job. But I just think that the issues that got crossed and weren't transparent enough were immigration, the border, and really just the economy as a whole, how we got to where we are because of global inflation, not anything to do with America, and just kind of like realizing that these problems are valid. They're not the cause of these problems, but we're all here to find a solution.
Sure.
Rather than just acting like these problems aren't here.
That's interesting. You had mentioned the two issues, obviously immigration, the economy. Most voters would say that was maybe the 1-2 punch. One messaging that I feel like a lot of folks would say Vice President Harris made very clear is her stance on reproductive rights. She made that a very big part of her stump speech. She even would say, I think the lines of, the government shouldn't, tell a woman what she can or can't do with her own body. How do you feel like that message either did or didn't resonate when it comes to the vice president?
I think it resonated. I don't think there's anyone walking around right now that doesn't know that she is in favor of reproductive freedom. However, I think Donald Trump did a great job at dodging the bullet for Roe when it was convenient for him to say, oh, we're going to send it to the states. It's just at the states. People across the country don't realize that means right now there are total abortion bans, and have been since 2022. Leaving it to the states and Donald Trump's magic words, oh, I agree with these exceptions, that's not the reality. That the reality is, around the country right now, there are near total abortion bans with no exceptions for rape and incest. Right here in Kentucky is one of them, Texas, Arizona, there are so many. However, abortion was on the ballot in 10 states, and it won in 7 of them.
That's the majority.
It is the majority. And, when you look at things like abortion, the majority of Americans are on the same side of the fence. However, it's not a determinator for half of Americans. That's the problem. It's only a determinator when it's your daughter who is carrying their rapist baby saying, please don't make me do this. Will they be insured to be able to get reproductive care? It's the people who think like that who are like, well, I need to be able to feed my family, and I know I made more money under Trump, the economy was better under Trump, or whatever. The economy wins. The economy is always going to win whenever you have states that are ultimately safe And it's sad that you cannot build empathy into everybody. You can't. At the end of the day, people are going to look out for themselves. They're going to look out for their paychecks. And I think that Kamala did a very good job with her stance on reproductive freedom. But with so many states having on the ballot, so many voters were feeling as if they were voting in favor of their reproductive freedom based in their state and voting for Donald Trump. They were not splitting their freedom. And I tried to explain to so many people that they would be splitting not only their freedom but my freedom when it's not on the ballot twice. And that is the hardest thing to get across to somebody, but those are things that sometimes unfortunately won't get across until they've been negatively affected by it, like things like the economy, and things like immigration. And it's all about your personal standpoint. I think Kamala did an amazing job meeting people where they were with reproductive freedom, and getting some people who were even undecided on the matter to see our open-mindedness of it. But I still think it wasn't enough to pull them over from those issues about immigration and about the economy when Donald Trump can just say, well, I'm in favor of this. People think that means that we get those exceptions, and those wouldn't be enough, but it's the fact we don't even have those. So he just gets away with saying things that make a lot of people feel better. Until they're them, they won't realize that we don't have that.
So in your mind, it seems like when abortion is the singular issue on a ballot, then people in most cases will vote in favor of certain exceptions, whatever it may be. But when it is combined into many issues on a candidate's plate, in your mind, that it doesn't quite drive a voter away as much as like the economy or immigration. Is that kind of your thought process when it's intertwined in a candidate as much?
I think you can, that's what I take looking at the results. You look at young women, it was our number one issue. You look at young men and it's not theirs. You look at older women, it's also not theirs. It's probably their second. Look at the economy first. And that's a sad reality, but it's the reality. It's a reality that we can't ignore.
So I guess moving forward, and I'm actually want to touch on Governor Andy Beshear's opinion piece that he wrote, I think in the New York Times. I know you said you had a chance to look through it. There's a part in here where he says the Democratic Party must show the American people that it cares about creating a better life for each and every American and re-earn the public's trust about its focus and its direction. So I'd like for you, if you can, to comment on that, and I guess how the Democratic Party goes forward. I mean, do they have to revamp? What does it look like moving forward in your mind?
I think that Governor Beshear's piece was amazing, and he is one who has a lot of cross-party support. He knows how to find a middle ground in people. He knows how to pull key topics from both sides and meet people in the middle. And I think he has a very good point. We have a lot to, I feel like, rebuild, and we have a lot to learn from, because it wasn't necessarily that we were voted against. People just didn't vote, or they didn't show out, and that's the hardest thing to kind of sit with. There wasn't anything that made all of these people decide, I need to get up and I need to vote, because it was easy for me to go and vote. I knew Kamala Harris was showing up and showing out for me, but of course I had a side seat from the campaign, so it's harder for a lot of people to trust and to know that there are good people in the government. There is honest ways to go about things. There are ways to get things done, even working together with people you might not agree with, but you can only get those things done by doing them, diving into the issues. And I think it's really important to broaden things and broaden the conversations rather than just thinking that there are only 3 issues in this world. Their reproductive health care is absolutely an issue, but let's extend that. Let's talk about, after aftercare. Let's talk about maternity leave. Let's talk about, there's so much more to that than just abortion. And I think that the media honestly did a really good job of drowning out all of the other stuff and just talking pro-abortion. You really get irritated when I would see a headline and it would say pro-abortion activist, because that's not the messaging we're trying to give. We are freedom. It's a choice. And, to meet people where they are, you have to know what gets across to those people. You have to know what is going to make a 75-year-old man vote across the aisle is probably not just going to be saying pro-abortion all of the time, because he doesn't feel as if that is going to involve him. But if it's his granddaughter needing reproductive care because her life is at risk, that's a little bit more something that you can empathize with, something that you can say, oh, okay, that could actually be me. And I feel like the Republicans honestly did a better job at making things like economy and immigration just fall right on the lap of the Biden administration, and we didn't do a good enough job on defense.
Last topic here, obviously here in Kentucky, I've been texting Republicans being like, hey, what are we going to look at when it comes to bills next year? Exceptions. We know they've been filed, but they haven't gone anywhere. I know you've spoken with Senator David Yates, but he's a Democrat. He only has so much power, so much pull. Where do you see this going in this coming session? Do you believe with President Trump in office that it takes a little bit of that onus and that urgency away from some of these Republicans? What do you expect to happen here in the state when it comes to those bills this coming year?
My expectations for the state of Kentucky are low. And, I think that I went into it last January with high hopes that I had good messaging, that I had a real honest story, and I could get through to these legislators, and all I needed to do was go speak. The first time I ever spoke publicly at a press conference was for Hadley's Law. And, that is still something that I have carried. That was like my first loss throughout this journey. And it is something that I've talked about a lot when people tell me, it's up to the states. Well, my state's already let me down once. I hope that they don't. I know that we do have good people in the Kentucky legislature. I hope that we really think about the consequences that we've already seen and we've already faced. And I hope that maybe this will be a learning experience for the people of Kentucky to know that, we tried to fight at the state level. I'll definitely try again, whatever it takes. But I definitely keep my expectations low, but they're there. Just because I know that I will fight, I know that it has to go one way or the other, and it will ultimately be up to the lawmakers of this state to come through for women, and if they don't, I'll continue to fight, and if they do, then there will still be more work to be done.
What's next for you? What's on the agenda?
Honestly,
I know your favorite question.
Yes. Honestly, I am going to figure out really what is next for me in this space. I have stepped onto a platform that I did not expect to be at. Looking back a year ago, I did not expect to kind of be a public figure, especially in the reproductive rights. And I know that my fight's not over. I don't want anybody to think that I'm giving up or that I am taking time off, because there's always work to be done. But that work will always be there, and I know that it's really important for me to get some rest and much needed catch-up time. I'm really looking forward to the holidays and just a little bit of normalcy, because we will be okay no matter what. And I'm just striving to continue every day and keep fighting for those out there who need it.
But your advocacy is not over, I assume.
No, I say we're just getting started.
Yeah, just getting started.